Hi, Debbie. Thank you for coming onto the podcast. And and welcome.
Thank you for having me. It's
Oh,
a pleasure to be asked, really. I think the way I was asked was quite nice as well. Someone who I'd never met on LinkedIn recommended me, so that was quite an honour.
do you know, I thought that might be the best way, rather than me kind of hunting people down. And it's usually better to kind of ask for somebody else's kind of opinion on somebody else. Who do you know that is really influential, or that's really impressed you with what they've done, or and that's really what sparked it. When I started this, I had absolutely no kind of real clue as to how this would go. But what I wanted to do really was kind of showcase ordinary people doing extraordinary things, and it's kind of turned into more of a female entrepreneurship showcase as well. As I felt it continue in that vein, I thought that's the path that obviously this needs to go, and we'll just take it from there. So absolutely pleased to have you on the podcast anyway. And I know a little bit about your story, but obviously our listeners don't. So tell us a bit about you. Where were you brought up? Where were you born? Where were you brought up?
So I was brought up in Huyton, the posh part. We had a roof on our house, so it was classed as being posh back in the day. I was born in 1986, went to school in Huyton. I've got 3 brothers and 1 sister. I was closest to my older brother Sean, who was 18 months older than me, so we used to walk to school together. We picked up our GCSE results together. Everyone used to think we were twins, and we've got quite cross telling people that we weren't all the time, so we just let them think we were twins at one point. So I left school in 2002, I think it was. I got my GCSEs, so well in my GCSEs as well, considering I was very early in school, hated school. Had a bit of a tough time. My brother got bullied. I used to defend him a lot, which led to myself getting bullied. So I found it easy just to bunk off and go in for my favourite lesson, which was music. So I was quite lucky. I didn't have to try very hard at school, and I still come out with okay GCSEs. Then I went to college, but unfortunately my mum got sick. So I left college to look after my brothers and sisters when I was 17. And then just before that, actually, I started work quite young. I started when I was 14. I grabbed my brother's national insurance number and went to Farm Foods and told them I was 16 and asked for a job, and they gave me one. So I used to bunk. When I was bunking off school, that's where I was. I was working in Farm Foods, getting myself some money. Probably get in trouble if they found that out now.
Fabulous.
So we didn't have much money growing up. My mum was a single mum for many years with 5 children. We lived in a council house. It was quite tough, but I always knew that I wanted better than what we had. So I went to work. I used to help my mum out with my wages and things like that, and that started the thought process really of working hard to get what you need. So I started working in Farm Food and started working in the cake shop next door. And I used to do that on a Saturday, take the cakes home to my brothers and sisters after work and things like that. I was on buttons, I was literally not getting paid much at all, but back then it was like $1 million. I was the only person bringing money into the house, so it was a nice feeling. And then I started working in a pub. Again, lied about my age. I told them I was 17. I told them I was 18 when I was 17. So I ended up working on my 18th birthday because I couldn't tell them it was my 18th. So they thought it was just my 19th. So my 18th birthday I spent working behind a bar for like £5 an hour or something. And I just carried on doing that then for a couple of years until I met my partner and I had my son, and I knew that I had to go and get myself a job that was going to fit around family life. So then I started working in a nursery school, voluntary. It was my son's nursery school, and the lady who was the administrator there offered to teach me how the systems work, how I could get myself a job. So I'd volunteer there. She taught me all the systems, and then that was enough to get me my first school administration job, which was lovely. I became a parent governor at the nursery, which was a nice sense of responsibility as well. I got to give back something really. She'd give up so much time helping me to start my career. It was nice to be able to give back something to the nursery school. And that's when pretty much my career started from there really.
So what is it you do now?
So I still actually work in a school. I'm a school attendance officer, which it's not the nicest job in the world when you've got to go and knock on people's houses and moan at them about bringing the kids to school. But I try and do it in a nice way where we give rewards to the children for coming to school. You know, if we know that they're having a difficult time at school, but they come to school anyway, I give them rewards. So I do that of a daytime. I finish work at 12:30 and then I run Sean's Place in the afternoon, which is my own organisation that I created in January.
Well, do you know, we school attendance officer, I think it's a posh way for what we used to call a wag chap.
Not heard that one before.
Yeah, well, it's kind of, I think it's a more kind of Lancashire phrase, but, you know, if you were off school, you were wagging it. And so we used to call him the wag chap, and he used to knock on my door more than anything as well. And but he wasn't nowhere near as nice as you. He wouldn't offer treats and rewards. He'd scruff of the neck and off you go.
Yeah, no, I'm quite conscious that's the reputation. I worked as a school administrator for the past 8 years. I did that while I was studying. It led to so many brilliant opportunities, and each year I just set myself a goal to try and achieve something better. So when I started working as a school administrator, I was told that in order to get my job the next year, I had to do an MVQ. And I'd never done a qualification since school. I was now in my mid-20s, so I was a bit scared of wouldn't pass it because you had to do your maths and your IT again, and I'd not done maths since like 1998 or something. But I did my MVQ level 3 and found out I was quite a good student, and I did well. So I said to my assessor, you know, what's next? What can I do next? He said, well, you can apply to university. I was like, oh, no, they won't let me into university. Like, I've left school years ago. I've worked in pubs and farm food. You know, I've not really got any qualifications that I could use. And he said, Debbie, you've done really well to a high standard. You should apply. So I got into John Moore's part-time as well, which I was made up because I could fit it around my school job. I could fit it around my children. And quite quickly after my first assignment, I realised I was pretty good at university as well. I was getting first. I feel like I didn't have to work very hard, but probably in hindsight I did work very hard at it. I was getting involved in conferences at the university. They had me writing publications for them, and I really, really enjoyed it. So while I was building my career and, you know, becoming a school administrator to go on to a school business manager, I was also studying and getting my qualifications behind me. And the plan was to then go on and do my master's degree and, you know, maybe a PhD, and just be a student forever because I loved it, really enjoyed it, and was quite good at it. But then Sean's Place came about, and it was the choice between giving something really new, so far out my comfort zone. You know, I didn't really have any experience to open a business. I was either to throw myself into that or I was going to go and do my master's, and I chose to throw myself into opening a business, which is how I'm here now speaking to you.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's just kind of backtrack a little bit. Obviously, Sean Place now exists, but what brought you to that? What happened?
So Sean was my brother, who I spoke about earlier. We were very, very close. He was like my best friend. We used to call him our fourth child. I've got 3 children, and Sean was our fourth. He would practically live with us, was here every day. We were very close in age. He walked me down the aisle on my wedding day. He stood next to me on my graduation. He was a massive part of our life. And he was the biggest kid you'll ever meet. But underneath all of that, he struggled really badly with his mental health. We had quite a traumatic childhood, which Sean couldn't get over. He had a lot of therapy, a lot of medication, and found himself constantly living this awful experience over and over again in his adult life. Whereas I chose not to think about anything, I was able to cope a little bit better and go on and live quite a happy life with my little family and, you know, university and everything. But for Sean, that was just never an option. He couldn't get through that. And then I lost Sean in July last year, a week after graduating. He took his own life. He didn't have the support he needed. He was, as I say, it was constant medication and therapy, but actually what he needed was something in the community that he could fill his days with, where he could know that he weren't alone and be with other men who were in the same situation. He could build his skills, his confidence, self-esteem. So he always wanted to work. He just never had the confidence in himself that he could do it. So he needed somewhere he could build up that confidence in himself. And we just couldn't find anything for years. I'd searched for it, just nothing. He was offered gym memberships by his community health team, but it just wasn't enough for him. He couldn't go into a gym full of strangers because his anxiety would prevent that from happening. He just needed somewhere where it was like a silent nod, really, that, you know, it's okay with all this, you know, we're all going through some stuff in here. So when I lost Sean, I spiraled really quite deeply into grief. It was just awful. I was going to meetings with the hospital. I was talking about inquests and coroners and funerals. It was a really, really dark place to be in. So I knew I had to make something positive from it, because Sean was a positive person despite all his mental health troubles. He was such a happy-go-lucky guy, and I knew that this wasn't what I wanted Sean's life to come to. So I just said one day, you know, I'm going to do something about it. I'm going to create somewhere that I was looking for Sean. And it might only be on a Saturday afternoon, and I'll volunteer when the kids are like, you know, my husband will have the kids, I'll go and do it one day after work or something. It was never meant to be a 5-day-a-week place, because I didn't think I had the capability of doing that. So I had a meeting with the hospital actually one morning, and it was a really traumatic meeting. I was really, really so upset at the end of it. But that afternoon, I had a meeting with the women's organisation in Liverpool about setting up my own business. Yeah. And I thought, I've got to pull myself together. I've got to get to this meeting. And I went to it, and I sat there and said to the advisor, you know, I've got this idea. There's a venue that are willing to give me the space for free. There's definitely a need there for it. So I'm going to open next week. Is that okay? And she was like, no, this isn't how it works. And it started from there, really. They give me some guidance. I did a lot of hard work, like 24 hours a day, chipping away at it. And then now we've got an amazing organisation. We've got 35 guys a week who access our service. Wow. We provide sessions such as guitar lessons, art therapy, cookery lessons. We do mental health workshops where we encourage them to talk openly about their mental health. We do fishing clubs, so we've started taking guys out fishing once a month. There's just so much that we do. The feedback's been amazing from the guys who access the service, but also the families. I mentioned when we were chatting earlier that we see people get quite emotional when we tell them what we can help them with, because this is something that they've been searching for years, and like me, just couldn't find it. So yeah, that was a bit of a whistle-stop tour of how Sean's Place came about, but that's Absolutely. The organisation that I run now.
So 35 guys access Sean's Place every week?
Yeah, even during COVID-19, we had 25 guys before the lockdown, and an additional 10 accessing a forest school course that we set up with the community centre, where they can get a food hygiene certificate and a first aid certificate, and also do really cool things like use a Kelly kettle to light fires, and, you know, make cups of tea on a campfire and stuff, really manly stuff. But then during the pandemic, we've been referred to with another 10 people who need support. So we've been doing things like online mindfulness sessions. We created our own cookbook using recipes that we were using in our lessons. We put it into a cookbook with some nice photos and things like that, and we delivered the cookbook and ingredients for some of the recipes to the guys in the home. So we've been doing like home cooking with them, so that's been really nice. And then so we've still been supporting everybody through the pandemic as best we can, but then when we reopen, hopefully towards the end of July, we'll be able to continue what we were doing before the pandemic.
Okay. So it's almost like I don't want to kind of downgrade it in some way, but it's almost like a community centre for men. that can go and just access a whole host of kind of support and services and activities. Does it go beyond that?
Yeah, it will do. We only opened officially in January, and as I say, I still work in a school at the moment, so I'm living two lives. So the plan is that I'll leave my school job and this will become full time. We have a meeting with the council next week about potentially getting our own venue, because there's so much we want to do. We've organised a family support network where we can support families in how to have difficult conversations, to make sure that they feel supported, that are aware of what is available in the area for them to access outside of Sean's Place. With the guys, we have trainers coming in delivering training programs, whether it be in IT, in construction, so that we can support them into employment. But actually what we found was 75% of the guys who access our service are already in employment. We open of an evening because my husband worked on a building site, for example, and he finishes work at 5 o'clock. And he knows of guys suffering in his work who really could do with coming to Sean's Place or somewhere similar, but everywhere closes at 5. So where are the people who were going for their support? Because everywhere's 9 to 5, but mental health isn't 9 to 5. So we open evenings, and that's, I think, why we've probably been so successful, because we've acknowledged that people need support after 5 o'clock at night. So in terms of employment, it's not really been something that there's been a desperate need for through our service. What has been a need is people with acquired brain injuries or additional needs such as Asperger's and autism. They also suffer with their mental health. So on a Tuesday afternoon now, we've just opened up a relax session. So it's Sean's Place, but really stripped back. So it's really basic recipes and the cookery sessions. It's gentle things like art sessions. We've limited our numbers, so it's a quiet, a calmer environment for them as well. So we're hoping that's something we can expand as we go full time. We've also linked up with the prison service. There's a really nice guy I've met recently who, like me, just wants something more for people. And what he was saying was that people are coming out of prison, they might be in there for, really minor things. And that's not to excuse any behaviour, but it shouldn't define the rest of the life. And when they're coming out of prison, there's nothing in the community for them. So these guys, they might have been abandoned by the family, they might not have a job, they're coming out with nothing but a letter. And if they phone the first number on that letter and they don't answer, or they have a bad experience, they lose hope and they lose faith. And then the crime spirals again. And then they go back into prison where they feel safe. So we're hoping that we can be that link with some of the prison services so that we can give them a bit of hope.
Who is it that you've been speaking to?
There's a lovely guy at Alcourse Prison called David, and a couple of the officers who work alongside him. We're actually due to deliver some art packs to them next week so that we can get them introduced to Sean's Place. And it'll be people that, they know I've got a fighting chance of doing something really positive with their life when they come out. We're not going to be an open door to everybody in the prison service, but you can't tar everybody with the same brush. There's got to be hope there for people, and that's why Sean's Place was created. Like my brother, he was close to going to prison one time. I remember stood outside court with him. He did something really, really minor, but there was a chance that he could have gone to prison. And I was stood outside the court crying my eyes out, just me and him, thinking he's a nice guy. He doesn't deserve this. He's just been led down the wrong path. And luckily he didn't go, but he could have done. And then if he'd have come out of prison and he couldn't get employment, his family turned their back on him, he had nowhere to live, that would have been the rest of his life then, just spent in this really dark place. Whereas if somewhere like Sean's Place was available to support them, he could have got trying to think what the word is, just welcomed back into the community and given a fighting chance so that they can go on and still have a positive life.
So that's second chances, isn't it?
Yeah.
And sometimes 3, 4, 5, however many chances people need, sometimes it takes a bit more than that, but yeah, absolutely. So looking at what, talk to me more about what Sean's Place does then. I mean, we've talked about, obviously, people being able to access kind of mindfulness initiatives, like the monthly fishing club, etc. You know, what else? What else happens there? Is there anything that
The
you've
feeling really, we're in the process of applying for funding and stuff at the moment, and we're actually finding it difficult to put into words what it is. Every Tuesday evening after our sessions, me and one of the team members, Mandy, we just cry with emotional. And I know that sounds really ridiculous, but it's because it's what we wanted. It was so special. We've seen people come in who have told us they don't have any friends outside, you know, they're very lonely, they're isolated, and we'll watch them in the kitchen cooking with one of the other members, making these friendships, and then we all sit around and eat the food afterwards that we've just cooked, and the conversations are happening, and you see them going home with a big smile on the face, having the day before walked into it for the first time and nervous wreck, and it's just the most special feeling ever. It's quite a relaxed atmosphere. You know, you wouldn't know who was a member and who was a volunteer in there really. All of the volunteers, we all volunteer there, no one gets paid for working there at the moment, because we're so new. So we all give our time because we want to make a difference. A lot of people have been affected by mental health themselves, or the family members have been affected by mental health, and they just want, like me, to do something positive with it. So we do, as I say, we put on these sessions, and every session is designed to improve confidence and self-esteem. They're our core values really. We chose the sessions because in the beginning we did pilot sessions, so we invited people in to test out some of the things we were thinking of doing, and then we got the feedback from the guys about how it made them feel, if they were willing to try it again, you know, what impact it had, and that's how we created our timetable. And it just evolves every week. We have a couple of older guys who are really into the photography, so they've like created their own photography group now. So on the timetable we've now got a photography group because it's what they wanted, it's what they needed. We, as I say, we do day trips. Like we've got a lake in Formby who have given us permission to use there. So we do a fishing group on a Monday night where they learn. I don't know if you know much about fishing. I don't. My husband does. But they do things like making bait and making rigs and stuff. And then once a month, the skills that they've used in the, you know, the theory sessions, they'll go down to the lake and they can take the sons or the daughters or whoever with them, and just enjoy some time to relax and a break away from the stress of day-to-day life. But we're not a crisis centre. It's important to say that. You know, we've done our suicide prevention training, but we do have limits to what we can do. If somebody is in suicidal crisis to the point where they're thinking about taking their own life, we have referral pathways that we can signpost them to places like James's place in Liverpool. But we will support them to do that. We wouldn't just give them a phone number and say, "I'll go and phone them." Luckily, we've not encountered anything like that yet, but we know that that's going to come. So we're prepared as can be for that, really.
Good. I can imagine that this costs money, and so I will ask you about questions in terms, you know, I will ask you a couple of questions in terms of how this is financed in a minute. But what I wanted to kind of feed back to you and kind of point out really is that the way that you've kind of developed Sean's Place seems to me like a typical startup. You start up with it like a number of kind of preconceived ideas or what we call assumptions about what's needed, what problems can be solved, etc. by what you do. And then you take that to the marketplace, your customers or you know your service users, and you allow them to kind of develop, you know, them to tell you, well, we'd like this or we'd like that. And then you build around it, and then boom, you've got your organisation, or you've got your successful startup. And I think that's amazing, because what you're doing, you're building something, you're measuring what works, and then you're learning from that, and then you know you're then deciding whether or not to keep it ongoing. I think it's going to be the single most important thing for you to continue to do, because that will mean that you never get stagnant, you never get it never becomes the same. It will always be quite an innovative kind of organisation then, and I think that's. And I don't know whether that's become from maybe your qualifications at uni, or whether that's just the way it's just happened. But either way, I think that's that's certainly the kind of path you want to
Yeah, I
continue.
think it's from a brother's experience. Everything I do, I have Sean in mind, and I think, what's the point in me dictating to a bunch of guys who need support? Oh, we're going to do this, this, and this, and it's going to work, because that's not the case.
No.
Not everybody's the same. Not everybody needs the same support. So we try and put on a variety of services that will meet the needs of individuals. Really, it's so important to listen to them, because we want people to come. We want them to get benefit from being there. We don't just want them to, just turn up because there's nowhere else to go. We want them to actually thrive and grow and develop, and we're only going to do that by adapting to the needs of the people who will come in.
Yeah. So that brings me to how did you finance it? How have you got the kind of resources in place that help you continue on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, we've been really, really lucky, and I think part of this comes from obviously the reason why I've set it up. People have got massive heart, we found, and the centre that we use at the moment give us the space for free to run our sessions, and they believe in what we're doing. They want to be a part of that, and they've not charged us for a period of months now. Eventually a time will come when we're starting to generate income where we will be able to give back to them, and we'd be more than willing to. As I say as well, I've got a team of amazing volunteers. Some of them are friends, some of them are people I've met along the way, some are people who have reached out and asked, can they help, can they be a part of it? And every single person there is just amazing. They've spent so many evenings over the last 3 weeks on training courses over Zoom. Some are Sunday mornings at 10 o'clock, some are 7 o'clock on a Tuesday evening. And they just do it because we've all got the same values. So I've been very lucky to be supported by a bunch of amazing, amazing individuals. In terms of like the resources that we use and things like that, again, we've not had to beg for anything, don't get me wrong, but when we have reached out, people want to help because mental health affects so many people. There's an amazing fishing shop in I'm going to get it wrong now. It's in Rainford. It's on our social media page. We posted about it the other day. My husband went down and told them about the fishing group we'd set up, and they donated over £400 worth of fishing equipment to us.
Wow.
Just because they wanted to help. And they're a small business in the middle of a pandemic, probably don't have a lot themselves, but out of the kindness at the heart, they did it, which is lovely. We also have people running marathons, half marathons and things like that, so the donations really helped in the beginning for our startup costs. There's an amazing guy called Connor who, I get quite emotional when I meet Connor because he also has psychosis. He was in a mental health hospital similar to my brother, but he had the right support and he's come out the other side, and he ran his first ever half marathon a couple of weeks ago on his own. The half marathon was cancelled and he's like, I'm still going to do it, I'm doing it on my own. And he did it, and he raised £2,000 for this off his own back. So only a young lad, just the most amazing, kindest person. So donations so far have got us where we are now, really. So I feel like we've accomplished quite a lot with nothing really, which has been really helpful. But to be sustainable, we know that we need more really. So as I say, we've approached the council about potentially getting our own premises so we can open full time. We're looking at developing a training program. I've been on several training courses throughout this process, and for me, some of them are very black and white. They're very Americanized in the materials that they used, and it makes it seem very easy to save somebody's life. And from personal experience, I know it's not that easy. You can try for years to find support, also ask the right questions, and sometimes it takes more than that. So there's another organisation who provides drama therapy for people with mental illness, but what they do is they use real people's experiences, real people's voices, and they put it into drama on the stage. And when you watch it, it's the most hard-hitting, powerful piece of theatre you will ever see. So we're looking to team up with them and develop our own training programme to support people and families with mental illness using this. Mallet in the Community, they're called. They're only a new organisation.
What are they called?
Mallet in the Community, like mallet, like a hammer.
Okay.
It's two young girls who run it, and the piece of theatre that they used, it's, oh God, what's it called? I I should have done my homework before I joined this, actually. I didn't realise I was going to mention them. But it's a type of theatre where on the stage the actors aren't using the voices. There's a voiceover of real men using their stories of how they felt in that moment, what stopped them from doing it, how they feel now. And it's the most powerful thing you'll ever say. We're going to look to put that into a training program, which we hope will have a really positive impact. And by doing that, we hope that it'll also be a source of income to support us through Sean's Place. Because there's grants and there's funding out there, we've not actually been in a position to apply for any because we've only just got our legal status 2 weeks ago. So now we're in the process of starting to apply for grants and funding. But you'll know this and your listeners will know this. Grants and funding isn't always going to be there. You'll get declined because you don't meet certain criteria. The funding may dry up because there's been a national pandemic where everybody's needed the funding. So I don't want Sean's Place to be closing in 2 years' time because we can't get access to funding. So I'm going to be doing everything I can to make it as sustainable as possible. And the grants will sort of prop us up so we can do more. But for our core services, we want to be able to support ourselves as much as we can.
Are there any kind of initiatives that you're going to be using in terms of like donation initiatives? I know on a slightly separate kind of level, I know Macmillan each year have like a coffee morning initiative, don't they, where people raise money on it, on that basis. What are you guys going to do?
They're just absolutely amazing. Macmillan, that coffee morning, I've run a couple of Macmillan coffee mornings myself, so I appreciate how valuable they are. We've looked at things like sponsorship programs for organisations and for individuals. There's a lot of big corporate organisations who want to complete the corporate social responsibility but don't necessarily have anywhere in mind that they would like to donate to. So we're hoping that we can build relationships with some of the major organisations in Liverpool, some smaller organisations like accountancy firms and solicitors and stuff, where they can get a sponsorship package from us, and in return we'll give them free tickets to our annual fundraising events. They will be promoted on our website and on our social media pages. And then we've also looked at doing fundraising events. We were due to do a dog show in the spring just gone. I've got 2 dogs myself, so I know how entertaining they can be. And we want to get the community involved. We're based in Bootle, which, they've just got a really good sense of community. There's a lot of families with young children and things like that. So we thought, let's get the community involved and let's host a dog show. It was my children's idea, actually, and we were hoping that would be like a big annual event for us. But unfortunately, it didn't go ahead with what happened. So we've been limited to what we can do this year, but we're hoping that we can definitely grow. We've just started selling some merchandise on our website, which, we're not going to make mega bucks from it, but it's more about spreading the awareness for us. So we've got car window stickers that people can place in the car window. So as they're driving around Liverpool, someone might be stood behind them in the queue and think, oh, what's that? Oh, Mayo Mental Health. Oh gosh, I'll have to look them up. My son or my brother is really struggling. So that's more about raising awareness. We're selling the cookbooks that I mentioned before as well. Now they're on public sale as well. We're encouraging people to take photographs of themselves doing some home cooking and tag us in social media so that we can obviously share that a little bit more as well. And we've got our Band of Hopes, which are handmade bracelets with a feather on, which is our logo. And they're handmade by the volunteers of Sean's Place and some of the members as well. So we have them for sale as well on our website.
That's fantastic. How do you manage a team of volunteers then? What's been your biggest challenge in that respect?
Honestly, the volunteers have not brought any challenges really. They've been absolutely incredible. They all work full time. They've all got other jobs, but they give the time so massively. One of the volunteers in particular, Mandy, I could not have done this without her. She sits at home coming up with ideas on, challenges that we can give the guys during lockdown, whether it be like a 30-day art challenge or, a photography challenge and things like this. She's so creative and she's so passionate about wanting to make this work that she's my little pot of gold, really. As I say, like even with the training and stuff, it's not even been a challenge to get them to attend training programs so that they can support the guys as best we can when we return. They just do it. I can't say enough. I'm just really, really grateful to them.
Absolutely. Oh, that's fine. Obviously, Liverpool, being the area that you're in, there's a massive need elsewhere, isn't as well, isn't there? I mean, Manchester. Where do you stop, and what plans have you got to kind of take this further, if indeed there are any plans further?
Yeah, as I say, on my initial meeting at the women's organisation, one of the questions I said to the advisor, Jacqueline, was, do you think I can do this? Because I didn't think I could. I didn't think I had it in me. I didn't think I had the skills. I thought I'd be meeting with these big executives and they'd be laughing me out the room. I'd get found out that little Debbie from Heighton is, trying to take on this massive project. But now I'm actually doing it. I believe in it so much. I believe that it's working and the need is there. That my hope is that what we've got now will become a model that we can take into other cities, and we can take Sean's Place into the likes of Manchester, into the likes of Leeds, and we can have little Sean's Place hubs elsewhere as well. It wasn't in the initial plan, but I know that it's so needed and it works, so why not?
Yeah, absolutely. What would you say has been like, because obviously you've done so much right, what would you say your biggest mistake has been, when you look back?
I don't want to come across really negative, but I think my biggest mistake, probably believe that everybody wants to help for the right reasons. A lot of people do, but some people don't, sadly. And I found that some people wanted to help to benefit their own organisations, but weren't really in it to benefit Sean's Place. And that's when we were recruiting like board members and things like this. So that was a bit challenging, because then when we made a decision to change the board for them reasons, it also changed the direction that Sean's Place went in. We were going to go for a charity status, but instead we ended up going for a CIC, because we didn't have the board that we needed to be able to successfully become a charity at this stage. But from that, I've learned a valuable lesson. And when we do recruit trustees, so that we can get that charity status further down the line, we'll know to do it right, and to bring people on board who have got the same values as ourselves, who are willing to work hard as well. I don't want people on the board of Sean's Place who are just going to nod and turn up to a meeting for 20 minutes once every 6 months, and that'll be it. I want people who are going to be involved, who are going to help Sean's Place evolve, and are there because they want to be there for Sean's Place, not for their own personal gain.
Wow. Yeah, absolutely. And they say there's no such thing as altruism, don't they? In the sense that, even if you do something good for someone else, the feel good factor is still a motivating factor sometimes, isn't it? But I suppose when you are looking at individuals that are part of other organisations, particularly with CSR as well, it can sometimes be a bit of a, well, I suppose you have to be careful about which people you partner up with. You don't want to be part of any kind of, I don't know, almost like pseudo CSR. You want people that are committed to the cause and committed to the objectives of your organisation, that genuinely do want to help. And it's amazing. I'm just trying to think, have I missed anything? I find it interesting, of the people that I've interviewed so far on the podcast, imposter syndrome has crept up in every single one of them. And it has with you as well, little old Debbie you mentioned. And it's daft, because what you've done is absolutely amazing. And if this goes into Manchester, if this goes into Leeds or wherever, what other city it goes into, if it does, that will be, I mean, at the moment, it's 35 guys that access the service here. But that's 35 potential lives you've saved. That's one way of looking at it, isn't it?
Yeah, massively. And you'd have your kick myself moments sometimes. Don't get me wrong. My business is a bit different to some people measure success of their business by how much money they've made or how many sales they've had. For us, as you say, it's seeing the difference in people when they first walk into the building to when they walk back out of it. And if we can see that physical difference in them, we know that it's worked. And sometimes you can't measure that in money, or in, you know, in costs or whatever. So it's quite hard for me to talk about success and compare myself to somebody like Kath Jones, for example, who you had on last week, who's absolutely, you know, killing it in her line of work. Because as much as we're both doing things really well in our own services, it's, to measure it is very different. So
Yeah.
sometimes I do feel a little bit like, can I compare myself to someone like Kath Jones and say, you know, I'm really successful, you know, I'm running a successful business? Because actually it's completely different. You know, the way we measure things is completely different, and some people may not see that as being compared to, really.
Well, at the end of the day, a social enterprise works with different metrics anyway. You need a surplus, of course you do, you know, and that is, you know, that is fact. But, you know, the metrics, you know, with your organisation, it is the social outcomes. Are you meeting those social outcomes? Hell yeah, of course you are. 35 times.
Thank you.
So
Yeah, it is crazy. I find that the both, what we talked about challenges before, I think one of the biggest challenges I've had to overcome is not being scared of people in really powerful positions. I've sat in the CCG, which is the Clinical Commissioning Group in Sefton. I went as I'm so sorry, I got something stuck in my throat. They had like an open forum. It was like their governors meeting, where they invite members of the public in to ask questions and things like this. So I thought, why not? So I went in. I hadn't even opened Sean's Place at that time. It was, we'd done our pilot sessions, and I sat in front of a room full of clinicians, directors, chief executives, and I was shaking like a leaf. And I thought, oh, they're gonna either laugh me out the room or they're gonna want to help me. So I just told them about my idea, why I was doing it. I actually got quite emotional while I was in there, because I talking about Sean, it was only like 8 weeks after I lost him that I was in this meeting. And they were just the nicest bunch of people. They were so understanding. They actually did help. They gave me some really good contacts. They gave me some really good direction. And from that, I learned, don't be scared of people with big titles, because most of them are just the same as you. They've got children at home. They've got a husband who does their heading, or they've got, you know, a dog that slobbers over people when they come to the house. We're all the same. We've just got different paths in terms of where we are now.
yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really, really nice kind of conclusion, really, as well, as the fact that, you know, people are people, and it doesn't really matter what you do or where you come from. You know, it's what you do in life, isn't it, that matters, and who you are. And what would you say were the 4 biggest lessons you've learned then?
I think I've just told you one of them actually. I think my first one would be to follow your gut instinct. If something's not right, or if it doesn't feel right, it's probably because it's not.
Yeah.
I've used that a couple of times when I've gone with a feeling rather than you know, any text in front of me or anything, and I think that's helped me a long way, especially with like judging people and you know, putting things into action, and my thought process and my ideas. I think your gut instinct does definitely get you a long way. So I'd always, you know, advise people to listen to that feeling, really. Surround yourself with positive people who have got a good heart. I genuinely could not have done this without the amazing people who have stepped in to help me along the way. You just need them people who you can go to. It's so lonely being, you know, opening a business. I feel so responsible for so many people. I feel responsible for the volunteers. I feel responsible for the guys who access the service, for other organisations who might want to collaborate. It can weigh heavy on your shoulders, but if you've got good people that you can pick the phone up to and ask for advice, or, you know, just tell them about your day, it can take so much pressure off you. So I definitely advise people to get themselves a good network of people with a good heart, who just want to look. They don't want anything from you. They just want to look after you.
Absolutely.
Um,
The 3?
I'd say don't be scared, and believe in your own abilities. As I said before, like I haven't come from a lot. I still don't have a lot now. You know, that's why I work as a school attendance officer. I don't have a lot of money. My children are happy, you know, my husband's happy, we've got a lovely family life, and for me that makes me rich. But in terms of coming up against people who are talking about millions of pounds of investments and everything else, and LinkedIn can be quite scary as well. Like if you are somebody like me who hasn't come from a lot, to see a lot of money being circulated on LinkedIn posts and stuff, it can be quite daunting. But I think you just got to believe in your own capabilities and abilities, and know that you're just as good as any of them, and you've got the ability to make as much as an impact in society as a lot of the other people do as well.
Do you know, funnily enough, just to kind of support that particular notion, really, I found that. I mean, obviously, I'm not a Scouser. I'm not from Liverpool. I'm from the opposite end, and I know there's bands between our two respective cities. But you know, what I've found with Liverpudlians and people in and around Liverpool is this innate belief in themselves. And we get it in Manchester too, so it's not necessarily unique, but it is quite pronounced in Liverpool. It's this, doesn't matter where you've been, doesn't matter where you come from, it's what you do, and don't be afraid, and don't be scared. And do you know that? I think it runs through the vein of that city, of your city, and I think it's amazing. Number 4.
I've had to really think about this one. I'm going to take my own. I'm going to say it. Whether to do it or not is a different matter, but I do intend to do it. And it's about just taking some time out. I've got, you know, I work 2 jobs at the moment. I've got 3 children. I've got a husband. I've got a dog who's about to have puppies next week. So potentially, because I have 8 dogs in my house, you know, I'm on meetings, back-to-back meetings on my days off work. But also I've got 3 young children who need the mum to be the mum sometimes. And if you're constantly consumed by work, you know, if LinkedIn's constantly on, your WhatsApp chats are constantly on, you're not actually being Debbie, you're just being the children's place director, or you're being, you know, the primary school attendance officer. So for me, I need to learn to do it better, but try and switch off, and you'll be better for it.
Yeah. What do you plan to do in terms of your own kind of like well-being then? What kind of suggestions would you have? Oh, in fact, actually, let me reframe that. What would, you know, what things have helped you in terms of, you know, like well-being and mindfulness?
Going for long walk. I live quite close to Crosby Beach, and when I lost my brother, I was just consumed by grief, and I didn't want the kids to see me crying. I didn't want my husband to see me crying. So I used to get up really early in the morning and take my little dog for a walk down Crosby Beach about 8 o'clock, just as the sun was rising, and just to see the water coming in and out. It was so calming to see the dog skipping like Lassie across the sands. It was the most calming thing that I could possibly have done at the time, and I've carried that through to today. And if I'm feeling particularly stressed or I need some time out, I grab my dog and we go down the beach and we just walk for miles on our own. If I had more time, I used to be in a choir a couple of years ago, and we sang with Russell Watson, like Chesney Hawkes. We were proper famous.
Chesney Hawkes, come on.
Chesney, Kiki D was another one. But if I had more time at the moment, and I do plan to make time in the future, I'd go back to choir, because honestly, you do not need medication if you are in a choir. It's the most uplifting thing you can do for your soul. The friendships that are made there, the opportunities we had, you just forget about life for a couple of hours, and it's the best 25 quid a month I've ever spent. So
Brilliant.
If anybody is looking for a new hobby, or, you know, a bit of downtime, join a choir. You won't regret it.
Perfect. So I always usually ask anyone that comes onto the podcast really about a hypothetical tea party. So this is it. You're having a tea party at your place. You can invite who you want. There's 4 people. There's 4 seats. Obviously, I'm included. And they can be there. You know, it can be anyone. You know, alive or dead. Somebody that you would want there that maybe has influenced your life as such, or you would like to ask some questions. Who would it be? So you've got 3.
Oh, I thought there was one. I wrote one down, but I wasn't going to say it in case I get all emotional. But the first one would obviously be my brother Sean. I'd have him there in a heartbeat. We'd have some cake and we'd have a little gab together and stuff. The second one, I've got to say, would be my husband, because we haven't had a date night for about 12 years. We just don't get no time together. So if we had the chance to have a tea party with no kids there, he'd be the first one on my list, I think. I'm sure he'd appreciate me saying that. I've got to say Bruno Mars, because he would just be able to sing for us, and his voice and dance and perform and stuff, and it saved me a fortune on a ticket to his next concert as well. I feel like I should say something really businessy, like a really influential business person.
You don't have to.
I'm really struggling to think of a fourth one. I am struggling to think of a fourth one because there's so many amazing people who are sort of could influence you. You could ask questions to. I'd probably say, you know what, Mandy, the girl who was talking about earlier, my other volunteer, she's like my sidekick. She deserves to have a nice piece of cake and a cup of tea and a chill and everything she's done for me.
Perfect. Thank you very much indeed for coming on to the show.
And, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
I always find it quite inspirational, really, when you hear somebody's story, you hear of the challenges, and you hear them overcome them. And I think, you know, your story is no different, and our listeners will certainly be very interested to hear kind of how you've done what you've done despite everything. You know, I mean, one thing that does strike me is that, you know, it was only a year or so ago, you know, since you lost Sean, and yet you're here, and you're doing so much. You know, a lot of people would have maybe waited a year, you know, but no, you've picked up, you know, dusted yourself down, you've got on, and I think that's a credit to you, if anything else.
It's actually in the 20th of July, which is in 2 weeks, will be a year, so it's not even a year yet. And it was something that I had to fight with myself about, and I suppose when we talk about challenges, that was one of the big challenges that I had, people saying to me, it's too soon, you're grieving, you know, it's not the right time. And it may not have been the right time personally, and it might turn around and bite me on the bum in years to come. But for me, it was absolutely the right time. I used every single bit of energy that I had and put it into this. And for me, it was the best way to deal with my grief, because the other alternative was to be consumed in grief and not be productive for anybody. I feel like it's paid off. I feel like it was absolutely the right decision. And as much as it's hard when I've been to, you know, I might have a really difficult meeting with the coroner or my barrister about my brother's inquest, and 20 minutes later be sat on a Zoom call chatting to somebody like yourself, emotionally it takes all your energy, because I could be sat in the car crying my eyes out an hour ago, throw some makeup on and compose myself and speaking to you, and it's what I've done for the year. And you know, I feel like I've got through it, and without this, I don't think I would have got through it.
What character? That's amazing. Thank you again.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.